He prayed longer than he spoke. His gestures toward Isabel were formal, correct, devoid of warmth. She had been bound to him not as wife to husband, but as subject to sovereign. A queen without a voice in France, Isabel had been a princess of laughter, running through gardens, playing with her sister. In Spain, she was a queen of silence. Every word was weighed, every gesture rehearsed. To speak too much was dangerous. To speak too little, suspicious. Her tongue was still French, her heart still young, but both were now cage. The loneliness of splendor, her chambers glittered with gold, her gowns shimmered with jewels, her table overflowed with delicacies. But none of it brought her joy. For what is wealth without freedom? What is splendor without laughter? Each night she lay alone, a child queen in a bed too large, staring into darkness that whispered no answers. Life in a cage, so Isabel of Valois lived her first months as Queen of Spain, clothed in riches, crowned with jewels, bound in silence. To the world, she was radiant. To herself, she was imprisoned. The cage was beautiful, but a cage all the same. Part 13. The Machinery of Fertility. In Madrid, Isabel was not only a queen, she was a womb. Her worth, her future, her very safety hung upon a single question. Could she bear a son? The dynasty's hunger. Philip Roman II was a man of empire. He ruled lands from Lisbon to Naples, from Antwerp to the Andes. But the empire was fragile, threatened by enemies abroad and uncertainty at home. His marriages were not affairs of the heart, but of succession. Each queen was chosen to secure his dynasty, to fill the cradle of Spain with heirs. Now the eyes of Europe turned to Isabel. She was young, she was French, she was fertile. The kingdom whispered, "Let her give us sons." A body not her own, Isabel was scarcely more than a child. Her body, still delicate, was pressed into the role of mother. Her health was watched with relentless precision. Confessors asked after her secrets. Midwives whispered about her blood. Physicians examined her, recorded her every ache, every faintness, every sign of quickening. Her body was not hers. It belonged to the dynasty, to the court, to Spain. The silent pressure, no one said it outright. Yet she felt it everywhere. At Mass, eyes turned toward her belly. At banquets, toasts prayed for her fruitfulness. Porters offered knowing smiles, ambassadors sent careful reports, her ladies whispered behind their veils. Each passing month without news became a shadow over her. Each childless season weighed heavier. She was not asked if she was happy, only if she was pregnant. Philip's expectation. Philip did not rage or threaten, he simply expected. When he visited her chambers, his presence was heavy, his silence louder than command. He did his duty with solemn restraint, and then returned to affairs of state. It was not love, it was obligation, a ritual for the empire's future. The price of failure. Isabel knew what had happened to queens who failed before her. Cast aside, forgotten, or worse, whispered about, blamed, exiled. The memory of Catherine of Aragon haunted the halls of Europe. The fate of childless queens was a warning as loud as the bells of Madrid. Isabel was 14, and she already carried the fear of disgrace. A girl in the machinery. Each day, she moved through the rituals of court life, mass, meals, ceremonies, yet beneath it all pulsed the same machinery. Her body was the wheel upon which dynasty. Her youth was the price demanded by empire. And in her heart, she knew, no jewel, no crown, no throne could protect her from the judgment of the cradle. The machinery of fertility. Thus the girl of France, not Queen of Spain, lived under the rule of biology and empire. Her cage was not only gold and stone, it was her own body. The machinery of fertility had been set in motion, and she, child though she was its unwilling engine. Part 14. Music and martyrs. In the cage of Madrid, Isabel searched for fragments of herself. She found them in two places, in the lilting notes of music, and in the relentless shadows of faith. A French heartbeat. When musicians played in the palace, Isabel's face softened. Lutes, viols, and voices carried her back to Fontainebleau, to gardens where she had run laughing with her sisters. Music became her escape, a heartbeat of freedom within walls of stone. She begged for French chansons, for madrigals, for melodies that reminded her of spring and laughter, and when the notes swelled, she almost forgot the weight of her crown. But when the last chord faded, silence returned heavier than before. The Spanish piety. Spain in Philip's reign was a kingdom steeped in faith. Chapels echoed with prayer, monasteries flourished, and the Inquisition burned like a. To Philip, devotion was the first duty of a king, and suffering for God the highest honor. Saints and martyrs adorned every sermon, their torments praised, their blood sanctified. Isabel, raised in France's gentler Catholicism, found herself thrust into a harsher creed. The theater of martyrdom. She was taken to witness processions, grim spectacles where prisoners, branded as heretics, walked barefoot through the streets. Crowds gathered, priests intoned litany, and at the end, fire consumed the condemned. The Spanish called them martyrs for truth. To Isabel, they were shadows burned into her memory. Her young eyes, accustomed to gardens and song, now beheld flames licking the sky. Philip's devotion. Philip did not flinch at such sights. He prayed with fervor, face stern, hands clasped. To him, these burnings were not cruelty, but justice, acts of faith that preserved the soul of his realm. Isabel watched her husband, his calm unshaken as the condemned cried out. In his silence, she glimpsed a man made of iron, a king more priest than husband. And in that moment, she felt the gulf between them widen. Music in the shadows. That night, when the palace was hushed, Isabel turned again to music. She asked her ladies to play softly, French airs under candlelight. She sang in a voice trembling but clear, as if to wash away the smoke that still clung to her. For a few minutes, melody triumphed over fire. Song over silence, life over death. A soul divided. Thus her days unfolded, sunlit by music, darkened by martyrdom. In Spain, faith demanded blood, but her heart sought beauty. In Philip, she saw a sovereign devoted to God, but cold to her. In herself, she felt both queen and child, both prisoner and dreamer. Music and martyrs. And so Isabel of Valois lived between two worlds. One where melody gave her fleeting wings, and another where flames reminded her of her chains. She was queen of Spain, but her soul still hummed a French song, trembling against the roar of fire. Part 15. Between two worlds. Isabel of Valois lived in two worlds. One belonged to Spain, the other to herself, and each day she walked the narrow bridge between them. The French princess in her heart, she was still the daughter of France. She remembered the laughter of Fontainebleau, the soft light of Paris, the voices of her sisters echoing through gardens. French was the language of her soul. Her letters home, carefully phrased and censored, carried fragments of that world, a world she longed for, yet could never return to. Even in Spain, when she hummed a melody or whispered to herself, it was always in French. The Spanish queen, but to survive, she had to be Spanish. Her gowns were cut in Spanish fashion, dark and austere. Her prayers followed Spanish rites, long and unyielding. Her face was schooled into silence, her gestures measured into ritual. The court expected a model queen, obedient, devout, invisible except in duty. And so she bowed, prayed, and endured. The girl of France was wrapped in the armor of Spain. Two languages, two masks. When she spoke French, her voice flowed with ease, her eyes brightened, her spirit quickened. When she spoke Spanish, her words were careful, rehearsed, almost foreign upon her tongue. To one side, she was Isabel the child. To the other, Isabel de la Paz the queen, the Casor, the vessel of empire. But the two could never fully meet. Philip's world, her husband, belonged wholly to Spain. To faith, to duty, to empire. With him, she tried to be the queen he required. Solemn, modest, deferential. He did not ask for warmth, and she did not dare offer it. He saw her as part of Spain's machinery, as mother of heirs, partner in ritual, guardian of piety. Never as the girl who longed for gardens and song. A child between nations. Ambassadors wrote of her beauty, her grace, her composure. They praised her as a jewel that bound France and Spain. But jewels do not laugh, jewels do not weep. They only glitter where they are placed. And Isabel glittered between two worlds, claimed by both, belonging to neither. Between two worlds. Each day, she rose in splendor and lay down in silence. Each day, she played her part, though her heart lived elsewhere. In her cage of gold, she was at once French and Spanish, child and queen, daughter and wife, prisoner and prize. Between two worlds, she learned to endure. But she would never be whole. Part 16. The fragile hope. At last, the whispers in the corridors turned to smiles. The young queen was with child. A kingdom's breath. News spread swiftly through Madrid. Porters bowed with new reverence, priests offered prayers of thanksgiving, ambassadors hurried to pen reports. For Spain, Isabel's swelling belly was not just her own, it was the future of the dynasty. The kingdom held its breath, waiting for the promise of an heir. For a moment, the cage seemed liar. The glow of anticipation. Isabel felt hope stir within her. She placed her hands upon her stomach and imagined life taking root inside her life that might give her purpose, that might turn her marriage into something more than ritual. At night, she whispered in French to the child she carried, as though her mother tongue could cradle it in warmth. Her youth had been stolen from her. Perhaps motherhood could give her back a piece of meaning. Philip's stern pride. Philip received the news with gravity, not joy. His face softened, perhaps, but only briefly. He reminded her that this child was not theirs alone, it belonged to Spain, to the faith, to God. He prayed more fervently, ordered masses to be sung, and ensured that her every movement was observed. For him, hope was duty. For her, it was fragile light. The machinery resumes. Physicians crowded her chambers, measuring her pulse, inspecting her diet, noting each symptom in careful script. Midwives whispered of signs and omens. Her body once again became public property, watched, measured, guarded. Each flutter in her womb was celebrated, each faintness met with dread. Isabel smiled outwardly, but inside she trembled. The shadow of fear. She had seen the faces of women broken by childbirth. She had heard the prayers for queens who had died upon the birthing bed. At night, the music that once comforted her could not silence the fear. Would she live? Would the child? Or would she be forgotten? Another name in the long list of queens who failed. A fragile hope, and yet she clung to it. In a palace of stone, in a court of whispers, in a marriage of chains, this child was hers. A secret flicker of light that no ritual, no crown, no expectation could entirely steal. Hope fragile as glass, hope fragile as life itself. Part 17. A birth watched by the world. The palace grew still. Candles flickered in long corridors. Courtiers whispered in anxious knots. Priests knelt in prayer. Behind one door, the young queen labored, and all of Europe waited for her cries. The chamber of pain. Isabel was barely 15. Her chamber, heavy with incense and sweat, was crowded with midwives, physicians, and watchful attendants. Privacy did not exist. Each moan, each cry, each spasm of pain was witnessed, recorded, and judged. She was not a girl suffering, she was a queen performing. A kingdom on edge. Outside her chamber, the court stood tense. Ambassadors from France, England, and Rome paced the halls, quills ready to record the outcome. Spanish grandees whispered prayers, while ladies in waiting exchanged nervous glances. Every heartbeat of the queen was a matter of state. Every minute without news carried the weight of dynasty. Philip's vigil. Philip himself remained nearby, solemn, silent, surrounded by confessors. He prayed, beads slipping through his fingers, lips moving with mechanical devotion. He did not enter. Kings did not witness such things. But he listened, waiting for the sound that would seal his legacy, a child's cry. The ordeal of flesh. Hours dragged like centuries. Isabel's young body strained under the agony of labor. Her hands gripped the sheets until her knuckles blanched. Her lips whispered half prayers, half screams. She had been trained for ritual, not for this raw crucible of blood and breath. In the moments when she faltered, the midwives urged her forward with cruel necessity, for Spain, for God, for the king. The cry, and at last, the sound came thin, sharp, miraculous. A newborn's wail pierced the chamber. The women wept, the physicians sighed in relief, the attendants rushed to spread the news. Child had been born to Spain. The announcement. Trumpets blared across Madrid. Bells rang. Messengers galloped through the night. In Rome, in Paris, in London, in Valois would soon deliver the tidings. Isabel of Valois had born a child. The dynasty endured. The peace held. For a moment, she was no longer a stranger, no longer a prisoner. She was triumphant. A birth watched by the world. Yet as she lay pale and trembling, the crown heavy on her brow, even in her bed, Isabel knew the truth. The world had not cheered for her. It had cheered for the child she had delivered. Her agony had been spectacle, her womb theater, her birth watched by the world. Part 18. The queen who vanished for a brief moment. Isabel of Valois was the center of the world. The bells of Madrid rang for her. The ambassadors praised her. The kingdom cheered her child. But celebrations pass swiftly, and queens, too, can vanish. The shadows after birth. The ordeal of childbirth had left her pale, weakened, trembling. At 15, her body had been torn between childhood and motherhood, between life and death. Physicians hovered, prescribing rest and prayers. But rest was a luxury she did not possess. The court demanded appearances, ceremonies, devotions. Even as her strength faltered, she was paraded like a relic of triumph. She smiled when commanded, bowed when required, prayed when expected. But beneath the silks, her body withered. The dimming light in the great halls of Madrid, courtiers began to whisper, "The queen is fading." Her laughter was gone. Her music grew quiet. Her face, once bright, grew pale and hollow. At banquets, she seemed a shadow of herself. At prayers, she knelt longer than her strength allowed. Sometimes she did not appear at all. Each absence spoke louder than her presence. Philip's distance. Philip noticed, but from afar. His prayers deepened, his devotions lengthened, but his gaze remained fixed upon the machinery of empire. For him, queens could vanish and be replaced. Dynasties endured, even if women did not. To Isabel, he gave the gestures of duty. Physicians summoned, chapels opened, but never the comfort of tenderness. The vanishing girl, and so the child who had run laughing through the gardens of Fontainebleau, seemed to dissolve within the walls of Madrid. The courtiers saw only a pale queen draped in jewels. Her attendants saw only a body drained of youth. Her family in France saw only letters, polite and censored, with no space for truth. The girl was gone. What remained was a ghost in a crown. The queen who vanished. History would remember her name, but only faintly, overshadowed by her husband, by her successors, by the machinery of empire. To Spain she was a vessel, to France a pawn, to herself a vanishing shadow. And though her body lingered in the palace, her spirit had already begun to slip away, fading into silence, into sorrow, into the pages where queens are mentioned once, and then forgotten.